It seems right now out in Indianapolis, where the 2025 edition of the NFL Scouting Combine, aka the Underwear Olympics, as well as way back east amongst the Foxborough faithful, that we got a little case of the fever. And the only prescription is more Mike Vrabel. The positivity raining down across the NFL and the football world for the new Patriots head coach is astounding. He seems to be some of the talk of the town and the toast out in Indy, where, as we record the latest edition of Six Rings and Football Things with your old pal, Nick Fitzy Stevens, joined as always by the fabulous and talented Miss Megan Onalini, that everyone's talking up Mike Vrabel as the actual physical activities begin as we record today, Thursday, February 27th, 2025. However, it's not just Mike Vrabel mania that people are talking about. They're talking about the dynamics with his executive vice president of player personnel, Elliot Wolf. Sadly, they're talking about the NFLPA report card, which came back with a hot slice of Debbie Downer and a side of sad trombone. Worse than last year. My word, does Mike Vrabel have his work cut out for him? Plus, on today's show, Mego and I are going to talk about the kinds of players we think the Patriots are going to be going for in light of Chad Graff and the Athletics' new report that they're out on T. Higgins and that they're in on the big guys, as well as some of the other folks who may pop, shine, and dazzle out in Indy. All right, Mego, it's a very, I got to say, honestly, here we go. Our first comment as we record live on the Fitzy GFY and EEI socials. In Vrabel, we trust. It used to be in Bill, we trust, and now it's Vrabel mania. What do you make of all the positive things everybody from the media to his own players to now a lot of the prospects? I mean, they're not going to be a dum-dum and come out and just be like, yeah, I met with Mike Vrabel, unimpressed. Guy's a total chode. No, they're loving up some Vrabel right now. The thing is, he's inspired. I think the big thing, and tell me how you feel, I think he's inspiring confidence in everybody. And that's the big thing. I think people are confident that he can run a competent professional program.
Yeah, Fitzy, if somebody did come out with the Chode report, like that would be the biggest news out. Here we go, the Chode report from the Combine, but we haven't gotten that. So
I don't know why I went to that insult. I love it. I don't know why I didn't go like ding dong or putz or something. I don't even use the word chode that often.
I like where we're starting. I do remember one of our first time doing radio together, you got dumped for using that phrase. And Bridget Prue was producing at the time at WEEI,
right.
And she lost her mind. She said, how do you not know that you can't say that on radio airways, but we're on YouTube and we're podcasting. This is totally different rules. So I love where you're starting.
This is where chode the wet sprocket usually.
Good Lord. Okay.
Heaven help us. Okay. So
get back on the tracks. Yeah, I think a lot of it has to do with the note that the tone that Mike Vrabel struck in his introductory press conference versus who he was talking to the media at the beginning of the Combine. I wrote about how I found it very notable that he did not name check Elliot Wolf once compared to his introductory press conference a month ago when he name checked Elliot Wolf 6 times. It just seems very apparent, despite even what Elliot Wolf said yesterday about having the final say in what's happening with personnel decisions, that this is Mike Vrabel's show. And he commands a room. The way that he communicates is very clear. He sounds like a guy who's going to be working with authority, but also fairness. Mm-hmm. And I think there's such a craving of organization within that franchise. That was the biggest problem facing the Patriots last year, was how much got lost in translation, how many miscommunications there were, guys on your staff not knowing what other guys did or were supposed to be doing, everything falling through the cracks and no attention to detail. And so I do, like we say, that it's the adults in the room. We use that way too often. And honestly, it's kind of disrespectful to everybody else in the room. But I do think that there's this sense of everybody responding to at least the outward facing Mike Vrabel that we're getting, and that it is even different than who he was a month ago. Instead of having a head coach who's backtracking from what he said in his press conference, it's more like we see him developing, turning into who we think he's going to be, which is this guy who has a lot of swag, kind of sarcastic, very quick-witted, very smart, and again, works and speaks with a lot of authority. So of course people are responding well to that.
Yeah, he's confident, he's prepared. He does understand the task at hand in his opening remarks because he spoke on Monday from the combine. Excuse me, he spoke Tuesday, Elliott Wolf spoke on Wednesday, and the activities got underway on Thursday. He seemed like he's complete not only in charge, but also not daunted by the daunting task. He's not overwhelmed by how much work he's got to do, both on-site at Indy, subsequently back home in free agency, and then leading up to the draft in Green Bay at the end of April. It's a blank ton of work, but he's got the right guys to get it done. And also, have you noticed how much in everything we'll get to Elliott Wolf's remarks and how they struck us momentarily, but have you noticed the guy John Stryker, Stretch? Have you noticed
Mhm.
times that guy's name has been mentioned by everybody that he's going to be like part Burge, part Ernie, and 100% essential to the entire football operation?
Yes, yeah, I think that from what I've heard, he's had a really big presence at the combine, which is a good thing. I think one of the reasons that they brought in Vrabel and did it so quickly was they were looking for what everybody calls a program builder, which is somebody who has connections throughout the league, has lieutenants that they can bring in. Mayo, one of his biggest problems, and I'm sorry, but it's impossible to talk about Vrabel and who he is at this point without comparing to the guy that just got fired after a year in Gerard Mayo. Mayo didn't have lieutenants. And that was a problem. They had to go out and search through a dozen guys to get him his offensive coordinator just because he didn't have that organically, or the people perhaps that he wanted to put into those positions just weren't the right fit, weren't experienced enough, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
So I think those reports of Stretch having such a big impact down there, having Cowden in the room, like having these guys who are attached to Terrell Williams, having guys who Vrabel is bringing in and so organized. When we talk about a program builder, that's what we mean. And I think it's really important when you have so much work to do this offseason, because I do think at this point, the combine is as much about this period 2 weeks before free agency as it is about the underwear Olympics. It's about making the connections around the league, talking
Mhm.
to people, getting a sense of what the price is going to be, getting a sense of what you're going to be able to execute in free agency and trades, and letting that inform what you're going to do in the draft.
Exactly. And I think the word is getting out in the league and beyond. It's sort of like the way that the word is starting to spread in MLB. Like, oh man, the Red Sox made a lot of really good moves and they spent money this offseason. The Yankees are unhappy. People are on notice, like the Sox might be back. Same way they know that the Patriots have a Herculean task, to say the least, in rebuilding this roster. And Vrabel himself has said the roster at the end of August is going to probably look drastically different from the roster right now. Guys that have been staples on the interior, like Devon Godchaux over the last couple of years, who got extended last year, I think in large part because Christian Barmore was injured. He's been told, feel free to seek out a trade because the way
Mm-hmm.
that they're going to go about business does not involve his talents and services. But thank you very much. And please feel free to pick up your subpar boxed lunch on the way out as well. Um, I want we'll get into the report card and how
Uh-huh.
the NFLPA was none too kind to the Pats again. But regarding Elliott Wolf and the dynamic with Mike Vrabel, who, as we say, is clearly in charge, and he's going to be reporting to and getting advice from his guy, Ryan Cowden. And Stretch obviously is going to have a lot to say about every aspect of the operation. And I kind of sneaky love that because I feel like ever since Ernie Adams left, sure, Tom Brady leaving, biggest issue for the Patriots. Right after that, losing the brain drain, or the brain drain that involved losing Josh and then most importantly Ernie, was so significant it almost couldn't be quantified. But as far as how last year had trappings, misgivings, and failures aplenty, I did appreciate that when Elliott Wolf came out on Wednesday at the combine, he owned a lot of those L's.
Last season, ultimately the roster was on me. We were 4-13. Um, just didn't get enough done. Certainly the free agency class didn't live up to our expectations. The draft class, it's too soon to tell, but we were expecting a bigger impact from some of those guys, and we're still hopeful that they'll get to that point. We're excited about Drake May. We're excited about working with Coach Vrabel, and everything that we're doing is to improve this football team.
All right. What'd you think about Elliot Wolf and the extra portioned mea culpa that he offered up right there, saying going even further, Mego, as to say that every time Drake or Jacoby got hit last year, and there were several of them, he felt it and felt badly about it as well.
Yeah, I think it was the necessary message for him to send and shows self-awareness about how fans, maybe even media view him and the surprise that maybe some had initially a month ago when Elliot Wolf was retained and Gerard Mayo and just about everybody else in Foxborough, aside from Jeremy Springer, was moved on from. So I think it's the right note. I just listened to him and it's just such a contrast to Vrabel. And I know that's a simple takeaway, but it makes me feel like there's just no way that I can really buy that if those two are in a room together and Elliott feels incredibly strongly about somebody at the number 4 pick and Vrabel feels incredibly strongly about someone else at the number 4 pick, that Elliott is the one that maybe even appealing to the crafts is winning out. And that's not like informed or anything. That's just listening to the two talk. And I think what was most telling about Vrabel when he talked the day before was the way that he described, even looking particularly at free agents, but saying like, and I'm paraphrasing, I see a guy and I know how coaches think, and I think this coach is gonna love this guy. And I see another guy and I know how scouts think. And I think, man, the scouts are going to love the traits in this guy. And he kind of chuckled and talked about meeting in the middle with those two. And to me, I thought that's Vrabel talking as a mediator. That's Vrabel saying that he's going to have these two sides of the people with their grading system, the scouts, and then the people who he's hired mostly in his corner, the coaches, and both sides coming together looking for what the Vrabel era Patriot player is going to be. And ultimately, it sounds like he's the one who's like, almost like, hey, make your case, bring it to me. And I just don't get that sense from Elliott at all, even though he says he's the one making the final say.
Now, if he's the one who makes the final say, then maybe he is the one who, quite honestly, like hands in the card that says the name of like, well, the 4th pick, the New England Patriots select Will Campbell or Abdul Carter or somebody who could impact on the lines. You know, if that's it, great.
Or it might just be like the ownership when we talk about publicly facing, let's say the number 4 pick is not somebody who shakes out. Let's say it's at least within one season, another Jalen Polk situation where it's like, God, there was so much hype around this and you thought this was such a secure pick and then it falls short. Maybe it's a way of him saying, I'm going to fall on the sword there.
Yeah, it could be, because if, let's say they have a disappointing season, I don't believe that they're going to, and that's with good cause, not just being a Foxborough fanboy and a complete homer. But
can't disappoint if the expectations are low.
But I think the expectations are starting to creep up a little bit, not out of range or becoming unreasonable, but I think the expectations are higher than a lot of people realize. And especially because they have 9 home games, a 4th place schedule, and somebody who's in charge now who's taken a DGAF attitude, no BS approach, which is exactly what this team needs. Again, we'll go back to one of the things that Cora has said, and I think we've said about the Patriots: adults are back in the room. But as far as the dynamic between Wolf and Mike Vrabel, it totally feels like, yeah, thanks for doing my homework, nerd. Now get back in your locker. And then Vrabel just goes like it's the jock and the nerd. It's like the alpha, beta, and the tri-lam. And if they can find a way to coexist where it's like Elliott's player eval, his scouting system and intelligence feeds into the Vrabel program and tells him what he needs, and that turns into increased productivity on the field, better players, and harmony in the locker room. Awesome. And if it turns into, I just can't see it being a real power struggle per se, because Elliot Wolf doesn't have much of a leg to stand on. And like I said, if this season goes south, again, we don't necessarily believe so, but if it does, first guy whose head's on the chopping block, Wolf, be gone.
Yeah, I agree. And again, he says what he says, so you have to take him at his word that he has final say. I just think that it'll be really interesting as you move through free agency, where Vrabel said that his coaches are are handing in reports, and they're going to be handing in reports ahead of the draft, evaluating these guys. It's going to be interesting to see what the actual power dynamic, how it shakes out, how much of a sense we can get of that is.
So one fan watching right now on YouTube, Andrew Dickinson, says 9-8. That would be annoying. No, I don't. First,
that would be miraculous.
It may not get them in the playoffs, but it'll get them nipping at the heels of the postseason, playing relevant football all the way through the season. Number one. And number two, 4-13 to 9-8 would be spectacular. 10-7 would have me doing Christmas cartwheels. Are you kidding me? And here's another great one. Big fan of Mego, Mirth, watching live on YouTube. I just want to ruin the Bills season. I just want to ruin the Bills season. Anything more than that is gravy. It's nice to know that the spite rivers still run deep in the hearts of Patriots Nation.
Well done. Yeah, you keep that energy. That's one of the best things when your team is struggling, is that you may lose some of the luster, some of the adoration and obsession with your own franchise, but you never lose the hate in your heart for your rivals, especially when they're doing well. You're like, hey, the higher you rise, the further you fall. So I think that's the right energy to keep as somebody who kept that fire for the Dallas Cowboys for a couple decades.
Yeah, exactly. I'm a guy who always professes to run your own race, but at the same time, when you were the standard and they chased after you for 2 decades, and then they took your standard away and now they've had it for a half decade, it's okay to start getting a little extra competitive with them in a fraternal dynamic. Good point by Los, who talks Pats on X and is our favorite aggregator out there and super fan. There is still a chance that Elliott Wolf is let go after the draft. That would is a chance. So you're telling me
there's always a chance that somebody's going to get fired.
Yeah, I know, but I don't think so. I think unless things go south, I think he'll be retained. I think he'll probably contribute to the greater good of the Patriots this year. One other quick thing I wanted to share before we move on to the next segment, Mego. As far as the players, now interviews, in case folks don't know, it's a rival. It's a lot of talking. They do a car wash. Players and coaches speak with local media, national media, do the NFL Network platforms and whatnot. And you're allowed to interview at 18-minute intervals up to 60 different players before the actual 40s, 3 cones, 10 yards, bag drills, jumps, etc. get going tonight for the next 3 days. And then the combine wraps up. A lot of players we would love to see on the New England Patriots have had a chance to speak with Mike Vrabel and his staff. We've seen videos from last year where Drake May went and spoke with Brian Daboll and the Giants, and he just gushed all over him. These two stuck out to me. 2 players I would love to see wearing a Patriots uniform. First, we have Alabama Crimson Tide supremely talented linebacker Jihad Campbell, who's likely going to go in the first round.
Yes, I did. Yeah. What would that meeting like? It was pretty cool. It was intense. Vrabel, he was definitely intense. He's a great guy, though. I have nothing to say.
So Jihad Campbell likes him some Mike Vrabel. And then now the guy who's been generating a little buzz because of a little stress going on in his body, somebody who I think if the Patriots had the first overall pick, they would have targeted. I don't know if he's going to fall all the way to 4, but man, would I love me some Abdul Carter.
Abdul, have you had a chance to meet Patriots coach Mike Vrabel? And if so, what were your impressions of him?
Very serious, very upfront guy. Like he all about his business, which is what I like.
Okay, so now we're getting now we know what these meetings are like. Like there's not a lot of grab ass, not a lot of slap. Yeah,
I do think that they're terrifying.
He's eye to eye with him, Mego. He's like a big ass dude who's eye to eye with them. Like, all right, tell me how you'll fix. Tell me what you'll do in this team. Tell me why.
Mike Vrabel is gonna put these guys through their paces in these interviews. This is not just, hey, tell me about your hometown. Tell me about the mantra of your high school coach. Like, I think when those guys are saying that he's intense, he's serious. 18 minutes with Mike Vrabel might feel like 45 minutes of some of the toughest grilling of your life.
It's great. I think it's great. Again, you know what the fun is going to be when we get back to it, not making jokes, not doing sideline antics of trying to do gotcha videos with people. Just what the fun's going to be? Winning, playing good football and being responsible. All right, Pats fans, how you feeling? Are you getting a little bit of that Vrabel fever? You feel weird about this dynamic between Vrabel and Wolf? I think I'm okay with it. I don't think there's even really much smoke, certainly not much fire to be found behind that as well. It's well warranted. And how would you fare with 18 minutes being interviewed by Mike Vrabel? You can holler at us anytime at Six Rings Pod with your host, Nick Fitzy Stevens at FitzyGFY, and the great, mighty, and wonderful at Megan_Ottolini. Okay, Mego, let's do a quick little thing on the Patriots report card. Now, every year, the NFLPA issues an anonymous player contributed report. I think it's like 1,300 people vote on this thing, and they submit votes on everything from the gym, daycare, head coaches, support staff, strength and conditioning, to overall facilities, travel, etc. And it was a head turner last year when the Patriots finished 26th out of 32. And the harumph and the cane stomping was all about, my goodness, how could a team who just a few years ago was the gold standard, 9 Super Bowls, 6 Lombardi trophies, how could the mighty fall so far in just a short amount of time? And now to see, and a lot of blame was placed at the feet of Belichick again as well. Now, a year later, the only person or element of the team that gets a really high mark is Coach Gerard Mayo, who got a B+ from the players. His brother, who is the strength and conditioning coach then and now still, got a B. Everything else was a C-, a D, and there were even Fs, like for the team playing. What the hell?
I know. You know what is ironic about the team playing is that really for the last 8 years since they acquired it, the Crafts have been using that plane as an advertisement more than anything. You
Look at
land
aircraft. Wow, we have our own
you
plane.
land in Boston, you land in Providence, and you see that plane with the trophies on the tail. And it's a reminder of like, yeah, they got their own plane. This is like top of the league. And then you find out that it doesn't have Wi-Fi, reportedly, according to the survey. You find out that there's ashtrays on the sides of the seats. And there was a report out that the plane dates back to actually 1991. And Kraft has 2 other personal planes of his own that are much nicer. Like there's a level of this where I know people react and they go, ugh, spoiled professional athletes. They don't like the private plane that they're on. But whatever, this is the business that you're in. This is the business that you have chosen. And so you have to cater, especially when you're not in that winning culture, when you don't have Tom Brady, when you don't have Bill Belichick at the heights of their powers, you got to cater to that. Like this is the sandbox you're playing in. And I think the other thing that I'd take away from it is it's got to be frustrating in one sense to the Crafts because they knew some of the grades last year and have already been undertaking the improvements. For example, the weight room. The weight room is not good. Like I've seen it. It's tiny, it's cramped, it's out of date. But they're trying to improve that and have been, but they won't have it till 2026. So like some of the facility stuff, they are trying to upgrade, but it's just not ready yet.
Right. Let me read you from the NFLPA report card. Overview. The Patriots rank 31st overall this season, but there are signs of progress, even though they dipped down a few spots from last year. Following last year's report, owner Robert Kraft announced a $50 million investment in a new facility adjacent to the stadium. Side note, if you go up the back walking ramps where the practice fields are, you can see where it's being built, which broke ground in December, is expected to open in 2026. After receiving an F- last year, F- for their treatment of players' families, the team made immediate improvements, including hiring a staff member to manage family services and adding a family room for daycare during games. However, key facility issues remain, including the need to renovate the building, a cramped weight room, and outdated locker rooms. Finally, only 39% of players feel they have comfortable space on flights when traveling. The plane is dated, it lacks Wi-Fi, and still has ashtrays in the seats.
It's from 91.
Yeah, I think they took away. So they took away I believe the first airline to ban smoking was Northwest Airlines in 1987. I remember sitting in my smoke-filled kitchen in Braintree, watching the report on the CBS Evening News and going, wow, wait, what? We always sit in the smoking section at Friendly's. How could that be bad for you? Mom and Dad say it's fine. And then, of course, subsequently, everybody across the world was like, oh, my God, I can't believe the fact that we've just been ingesting, forest fires with menthol all these years can be bad for you. Long story short, some of the thriftiness that may have been peddled by the organization, and a little corner cutting is now coming back to bite them in the ass in a day and age, Mego, where kids are coming in with all this NIL money. They're working out at facilities like Alabama and Oregon that are 22nd century and are so fancy they look like they were designed by AI and paid for by Gucci and Balenciaga, and Under Armour, and as far as like strength conditioning and the other things go, like you can't do the day and age of joking about bologna sandwiches. You can't just have, cruddy box lunches on other fields and with other teams. Guys are being fed nutrition that is specifically engineered down to the metabolism and body type of each individual player. So I hope that along with Mike Vrabel coming in and turning that particular tide, eval, players, talent, formatics, etc., that this also represents a change. Like this is the last time we see the Patriots in the bottom third of the league on the NFLPA thing.
Yeah, and I think some of the improvements that they can make, like the weight room one, breaking ground on a new facility, that is going to take a couple years. They're not projected to finish that until 2026, but some of this other stuff is not hard to upgrade. Like players complaining about how bad the carpet looks in the locker room, that is a pretty easy upgrade. Doors not falling off of the lockers in the locker room is a pretty easy upgrade. You look at other teams like the Red Sox, who have the oldest building in the city in Fenway Park. You look at the Celtics, which basically rent their facility from Delaware North and the Bruins. And the Bruins themselves, all of these teams have upgraded their facilities every couple of years, just trying to make it a nice and enjoyable experience for the players. And I don't think that's that hard. To your point about some of the catered nutrition, one of the complaints was there's not enough PT staff per guy.
Right.
Hire more of that. That's something that you can figure out within a matter of months before OTAs even starts. So to me, it's like, I think that there were quick fixes. I understand why ownership would be aggravated with, hey, we are trying to upgrade some of this stuff. But some of it is just kind of like, why wasn't that fixed last year along with the daycare stuff?
Great comment on YouTube from our friend Pete the Animal Austin. That's why everyone worked out at Brady's gym. Well, I mean, they liked his methodology, and they probably liked. Side note: I just started doing some of the TB12 electrolytes and protein powder. Big like.
Fitzy, you're like 8 years late.
Hey, all right. Hashtag they sent me some. Hashtag potential influencer.
Okay.
Hashtag gratitude.
Hey, as somebody who's wearing free swag right now, shout out Lululemon Fanatics.
I know. And here,
I'm not
as someone who's wearing free swag, shout out Vitamin C Brewing, who is going to get a shout at the end of the podcast when we do a reminder to everybody about our big event coming up Friday, March 7th, for the Lymphoma and Leukemia Society as well. Yes, we love us some swag, and we do love a little TB12 goods as well. This seems all preventable. This is one of those that, I love tossing about the phrase that everyone else loves, Mego. This could have been an email. And another one, but I can't do this. And I don't think we live in a world where it's just like, just write a check. This is officially just write a check's domain. Like I know a lot of checks have been written this year to pay off AVP and Covington and Mayo and everybody else that they brought in for a year. That was a waste when they should have brought in Vrabel last year. Now that's been done. The next phase of writing checks is going to happen starting on March 10th or whenever legal tampering begins, although deals are probably starting to get some framework and foundations laid out in Indianapolis at the Combine. Write those checks. Then in between free agency and the draft, write some more checks, full well knowing that the interest level is high and people are actually buying jerseys again. And write a few more checks and clean this up because they're not building a new stadium anytime soon. Gillette's 23 years old, and it's going to be around for a while longer, especially after they built the lighthouse and the giant jumbotron that I grace a couple times a game so that they could get the World Cup. So just
I do think that there is some tension between the football people and those upgrades. Because as you said, the target of getting the World Cup, there's been conversation about the World Cup being able to play on natural grass. And that's always a big debate within the NFL community of like, why do they have to play on turf when the players very much prefer natural grass for health reasons? So I'm sure some of these survey results are also related to the frustrations and the tension points there.
Yeah, the highest grade, like I said, was the head coach, ironically enough, followed by the strength coaches, and Gerard Mayo's brother is actually going to be sticking around to work with the team, which I think is very interesting. The worst, a combination of the weight room, that was a straight F, and
Mhm.
team travel, that was also a straight F. Hopefully they listen, I don't need them to finish first, because any of the teams that finished first, second, third, nobody won this. The Eagles finished like 22nd, and the Chiefs were 26th, I believe. So that's fine. I do love people that are watching live now as we record, commenting like, yeah, the ashtrays were for all the cigars they smoked after they won all those Super Bowls. If
Oh,
only.
well.
Yeah. If only. Exactly. Well, no big deal. Hopefully the Patriots will get on that, but that made a little bit of buzz this week as well. Hopefully next year we'll be talking about the New England Patriots. They don't need to be at the top, but let's just get out of the bottom in the dumpster, as well as the team, much like the facilities, gets a nice fix. All right, Mego, our last little segment here on the latest Six Rings and football things. Back to the combine. All right, so some news was made Thursday morning when our pal, friend of the pod, friend of the station, Chad Graff from The Athletic, put out a report basically corroborating things we had heard, most notably from Badad, that the Patriots were not going to be counting on, or rather focusing on, skilled players like, the fantasy footballification of the New England Patriots in 2025 is not going to happen in free agency. They're not going to go get T. Higgins. It's not because he's too pricey. That's just not their priority. What Mike Vrabel and company want to do is focus on the offensive line and the defensive line. To some, immediately that's like, oh, come on. This team is such a slog. We need some star power. We need some guys that can go deep and move the ball and score the ball. But then to others like myself, and I think you and you present company included, this is great. This is exactly how you win football games. Give me Harbaugh ball. Give me Vray ball. That's what I want the Vray bros doing. This is very good news to me.
Yeah, I feel like this is something, Fitzy, that we've been talking about for several weeks at this point. So to hear it confirmed in Chad Graff's report that that's the direction they're moving in is very gratifying to me. They need to focus first and foremost on their tackle situation. And if they can sign Ronnie Stanley, the first day that they're able to in free agency, to me, that's a free agency home run. That is a win. Like, that is huge. That should be your number one target. That should be your number one goal. And so if they execute that, I'm going to be very happy camper. On the T. Higgins front, I do feel like it's been trending this way for the last several weeks. And that is why I keep harping on, look at the trade market. And if you're interested in where the Patriots can upgrade, look at the trade market. It's bound to be somebody like Cooper Kupp. Maybe it's someone like DK Metcalf. I don't know. There's 5 or 6 names out there at this point who are at least quasi realistic for you to work with that franchise and bring them over. And so I think a lot of it makes sense to me. And I think for me, what's most satisfying about hearing and reading that report from Chad Graff is that it just sounds like a plan that they can actually execute, because they know that they have their quarterback. They are taking a real stock of the landscape of both free agency, the draft, the trade market that may be there, and being able to say, okay, we know where we're going to execute, or where we're going to try to execute in free agency. And so then we can complement that with the draft. We can complement, it's all working into one and a bigger plan, rather than just this amorphous, oh, we'll see like what's out there. We'll see what the market tells us. No, they're going to dictate their needs, through what they're already seeing forecasted.
So God Show is on the block. And guys like, Jeffrey Simmons, who played in Tennessee for all those years with Vrabel on the Titans, still there, loves him, could be a trade target potentially. People have talked about maybe getting Harold Landry, who had missed some time recently with a torn ACL, but when healthy, former Boston College Eagle, is a hell of a good pass rusher as well. That could address the edge issue, as opposed to overpaying for Josh Sweat, who made himself some money in Super Bowl 59. You could go. I know there's a glut of guards on the team. And I don't know how many of them are that great besides Onwenu in the first place. So maybe you overpay for Trey Smith out of Kansas City. He's pretty solid as well. There's Cam Robinson. There's a couple other tackles that could be serviceable. But as far as there's this guy, Milton Williams, who's on the D line. in Philadelphia. There have been a ton of rumors about him likely attracting the attention of the Patriots. Great. Give Terrell Williams everything he needs to stop the bleeding that took place last year. And we've already seen Sione Takitaki. We'll see you later. And now maybe guys like Jelani Tavai and others who maybe fit Belichick's system and what Mayo tried to operate with Covington better. They may not work for Vrabel and Williams. So, yeah, the overhaul is going to happen. And I don't think the Patriots, for anyone who's walking into this saying like, they're just going to be cheap again, they're not going to spend any money, I don't believe so. I think they know the task at hand begins with, once again, the solution to many of their problems, writing a check. If we hear anything, obviously we'll report big signings, whatnot. We'll jump out with a quick podcast for you guys. As far as the combine, any players that you have, gone against the grain of my rules and developed a crush on, or anyone who's caught your eye, or you think, I don't know, like, I don't want to go full SpongeBob meme and say like Patriot, but at the same time, like that guy could be a Foxborough fit.
I think I can't, like, it's still too early in the combine before you get to pro days or anything like that to develop real crushes for me. I think what I'm most curious about is seeing who's born out as actual tackles in this draft. Because one of the biggest issues, and I think why we're hearing that the Patriots are pivoting over to offensive line and defensive line in free agency as their targets, is because we don't know if these guys are going to be another guard. If you're going to get into an Isaiah Wynn situation with drafting somebody in the first round and very highly, and then find yourself, oops, this person actually can't really play tackle and doesn't like being moved to the other side. So when you talk about like the measurables of the combine and the underwear Olympics and all of that, I'm looking at the tackles and trying to see, what is the wingspan? What are the numbers here? Do they suggest that this guy can actually develop into a tackle, especially in that kind of like mid area, which everybody seems to be very focused on with this upcoming draft, knowing that there's not a lot of blue chip talent compared to previous drafts, and saying, well, where can you find somebody who you can develop in rounds 3 through 5 through 6? And so you then go and get somebody in free agency to be your tackle. And then you can develop somebody, on the back burner and have that person grow into that role.
Right. Man, they have so many needs. To me, if they're just going to fixate on BPA, I'd be fine with that, because that just means Yahoo Auto Draft has been turned on and they're not worried as much about needs as they are just flat out bringing talent, legitimate high stock. Everybody else would have jumped on this guy at that position type of talent in Foxborough. Look at number 4. If people freak out about Abdul Carter's stress injury in his foot, and for some reason he drops to 4, it'd be a Christmas miracle in April. I don't know. He's not working out at the combine, but guys that could show out would be like, what is his name? Jalen Carter, the defensive end line, Jalen Walker from Georgia. He could put on an absolute show. And next thing you know, everyone is saying he or Jihad Campbell, the linebacker I mentioned previously from Alabama, could be the quote new Micah Parsons. And every defense wants one of those that can be an off-ball linebacker, but a pass rusher as well. If they decide to, if people freak out about a half inch of arm length on Will Campbell, who played 3 years of tackle at the highest level at one of the toughest badasses schools in the country, if that becomes a thing, then what are we doing here? Offensive tackle wouldn't be the worst thing in the world as well. I don't think you're going to see the Patriots go offense early as far as back, tight end, receiver. And I don't even know if there's really going to be a true number 1 wide receiver this year. But there are everything that people have said, Mego, this is a great tackle, tight end, and running back draft. So this is basically restoring the fundamentals of Mike Vrabel football. And so any of those players who jump off the screen or catch you with a quick 10 time or just look strong AF this week, those are the guys I'm going to get most excited about.
Yeah, and it's interesting. You mentioned earlier the Devon Godchild being granted the right to look around for trades. That did within me spark interest about what's going to happen with Ramondre Stevenson, because similarly got his extension last season. And I think I wouldn't be surprised if they draft a running back with how this draft is looking and shaping up to be, and maybe move on from Ramondre, thinking that they can get something back and be able to use that right away. Or, you know what I'm saying? Like the way that they're looking to move on from Godchow, I think can really inform how Vrabel / Wolf, whoever you think is in the driver's seat, or that collective group of guys are looking at the personnel right now. And it kind of feels like outside of maybe 2 guys and everybody knows who they are, anybody else is expendable for the right price.
Right. One commenter who I just highlighted said, watch out for Syracuse running back LaQuint Allen. And they should also spend high capital on linebackers because it looked like everybody was running in quicksand last year. You were also without Juwan Bentley, who, yes, is going to be a year older, but didn't play last year after the torn pec. Los Talks Pats chimes in. I don't see them taking Mason Graham at 4 because of how talented deep the defensive line class is. That's a good point. He did meet with the Patriots and also said, no nonsense interview. And they asked me what kind of defensive lineman I am, a run stopper or a pass rusher. And he said both. I pride myself on being the most disruptive person on the defensive line at all times. So I love that. Yes, and I agree with this one. Good comment from Scott Latham as we look to wrap up here. Keep an eye on the Ohio State prospects. Hey, you've got an Ohio State graduate head coach.
Mm-hmm.
He coached at Ohio State for a while as well. Guys I love, Mego, I'll tell you, I like the Igbuka wide receiver. I don't know if he's going to slip to the second round for the Patriots. Love. Some people like the kid Simmons at offensive tackle, could be available in the second round. I love Travion Henderson, the running back who averaged 7 yards a carry last year and would be a perfect home run hitter / third down back, restoring that to the McDaniels offense. Love him. And my number one guy, the guy that people have said is literally Mike Vrabel 2.0 and might just be a little bit better. 4.5 sacks in the playoffs and made huge plays against Michigan and especially against Texas. Jack Sawyer.
Yeah.
That dude just looks like he was born. Please don't let me fall in love with him like I did McConkey last year and watch Wolf trade out there when if he's available at 38 and they trade out. So help me God, I'm going to punch the sun.
Yeah, and I think that this draft is going to be interesting because Phil Perry, our buddy, always uses the term prototypical Patriot.
Yep.
And so it's interesting to go into this draft where even last year at this time, there was so much carryover of the scouting work from when Bill Belichick was at the helm of everything. So this is the first year that I think we're going to see a look at what the new, quote, prototypical Patriot is really going to be. And so maybe it is somebody Vrabel's going after who he sees in his own likeness.
Wouldn't that be fun to now find a new like that's one of the many things. The football is going to look different. It's going to look so much better than last year, which looked like a sad retread of the decaying corpse and reputation of the Patriots. A new style of football, a new prototypical Patriot, a new look on defense. And yet maybe a revamped McDaniels offense. See, there's so much to be excited about. I just kind of love, let's end on a positive note.
Okay.
I love that it's about to be March. I love that spring is on the horizon. I love we can start dreaming of life more outdoors. And I love that 75% of the city's major sports teams are generating positive buzz right now. The Celtics look great. We'll forget about the loss against Detroit last night. The Patriots
second night of a back-to-back.
These things happen. Beat Cleveland Friday and everything's good, kids. Breg mania and everything going on with the Red Sox down in Fort Myers right now. Awesome. And people are bullish on the Pats again. Like these are good things, I think, which is why I'm very happy that we're able to keep a very positive tone, Miss Ottolini, here on Six Rings and Football Things. Any final thoughts before we wrap?
Not really. Just excited. I'm excited for free agency on the horizon, as you said. I feel like that's when everything really starts rolling with the new football calendar. And it's kind of like New Year's. You know, you can make your resolution for the Patriots of who you want them to be and just forget about everything last year.
Mego and I will check in just after the Combine ends on Sunday. So early next week, we'll have our post-Combine recap podcast for you guys here as well. Shout out to our friends at 2400 Sports for the fancy, if not awesome, new redesign of the Six Rings logo. New intro dropping next week for the podcast as well. So everything is getting a revamp, fresh coat of paint, all positive vibes here in the wide world of Six Rings. Thanks for listening, everyone. We will talk to you soon. Hit us up with all of your Combine crushes and more. We'll have yourself a great weekend and good luck to you. God bless. And as always, let's go Pats.